I made a video the other day about the government waste, fraud, and abuse and how the Doge is discovering some of that, particularly as it relates to U.S. aid. And you can find that video here. But today we're going to react to a press conference with Trump and Elon where they address the Doge and some of the findings that they have found so far. And we'll see what they have to say. And then also do me a favor and share this video with at least 2 people, okay? The more people that see these videos, the more YouTube will say, okay, people like this channel, and it will start promoting my videos more and more. So, I feel like a Twitch gamer with this headset on.
X, are you okay? This is X, and he's a great guy, high IQ.
I guess it takes a guy who names his son X to be able to find the amount of waste, fraud, and abuse that they're finding.
He's a high IQ individual.
And he's got this, I got this cool chain he's got.
So thank you very much. We had a busy day today. The king just left, and we've had a great discussion, terrific discussion concerning Gaza and everything else. We had discussions also about Saturday at 12 o'clock. It's going to be a big moment. We'll see what happens. I don't expect much happening with these people, but we'll see what happens. And we're going to be signing a very important deal today. It's Doge. And I'm going to ask Elon to tell you a little bit about it and some of the things that we found, which are shocking. Billions and billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think it's very important. And that's one of the reasons I got elected. I said, we're going to do that. Nobody had any idea it was that bad, that sick, and that corrupt.
I think some of us suspected.
And it seems hard to believe that judges want to try and stop us from looking for corruption, especially when we found hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that.
Crazy.
In just a short period of time. We want to weed out the corruption, and it seems hard to believe that a judge could say, we don't want you to do that.
Probably shouldn't be a judge.
So maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's a very serious, I think it's a very serious violation.
Yeah.
I'll ask Elon Musk to say a few words, and we'll take some questions. Elon, go ahead.
Buckle
Sure.
up.
So the at a high level, if you say what is the goal of Doge, and I think a significant part of this of the presidency is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, aren't we in a democracy? Well, if you don't have a feedback loop, FAX, we would have to, if you sorry.
A babysitter.
I tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have?
None.
If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large unelected bureaucracy. This is not to say that there are good people who are in the federal bureaucracy, but you can't have an autonomous federal bureaucracy. You have to have one that is responsive to the people. That's the whole point of a democracy.
Oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I mean, this is what, for decades, as far as I remember, and probably goes all the way back to, I'm sure, like the 50s and maybe even beyond, this is what people have been hoping and praying for, right? We go and vote, but it seems like it's just, they put on a different jersey, and it's the same people in charge. And we don't really feel like we have any control. We don't have any oversight on what the government's doing. You know, you better pay your taxes and you better not fail an audit. But if the government fails an audit and they don't come through on whatever promises they have, then so be it. They'll just move on. And this is what we've been hoping for. And it's so weird to see it actually happening. It honestly doesn't even feel real. And I'm trying not to be very pessimistic about it, but part of me is like, is this actually going to happen? Is this actually going to play out the way that they're talking about here, or is it just going to be like swept under the rug? So yeah, this is This is unprecedented. This is amazing.
And so And if you looked at this, if you looked at the founders today and said, what do you think of the way things have turned out?
Yeah,
Well,
right.
We have this unelected, fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative.
They probably say, did you not read any of our writings about this? Like, we warned you about this. Why do you think we fought a war?
This is not something that people want, and it's not. It does not match the will of the people. So it's just something we've got to fix. And we've also got to address the deficit. So we've got a $2 trillion deficit, and if we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt. I mean, it's really astounding that the interest payments alone on the national debt exceed the Defense Department budget, which is shocking because we spend a lot of money on defense.
Terrifying. That should terrify you.
And if that just keeps going, we're essentially going to bankrupt the country. So what I really want to say is, like, it's not optional for us to reduce the federal expenses. It's essential.
Mm-hmm.
It's essential for America to remain solvent as a country, and it's essential for America to have the resources necessary to provide things to its citizens and not simply be servicing vast amounts of debt.
And also, could you mention some of the things that your team has found, some of the crazy numbers, including the woman that walked away with about 30 million,
right,
etc.?
Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is, what happened at USAID. We're just curious as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from? And I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer expense. That's the honest truth of it.
Criminal.
So, we're looking at, if you look at, say, Treasury, for example, basic controls that should be in place, that are in place in any company, such as making sure that any given payment has a payment categorization code, that there is a comment field that describes the payment, and that if a payment is on the do not pay list, that you don't actually pay it. None of those things are true currently.
What?
So the reason that departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a massive number of blank checks just flying out the building. So
This is like a poorly managed business. A poorly managed business is what this is. That's what the U.S. is right now. And what I love about what they're doing is they're approaching it through that lens. They're auditing the U.S. government as though it were a business. Because if any other business were to behave like this, they would either be fined by the government, ironically, or they would be out of business. They would go bankrupt. You just cannot do that. But with the government, which, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is a business, it is a corporation, they can do it because they have an unlimited pool of resources, of funding, that they can take from at the threat of death or jail time. And so they take from the taxpayer, and then they can poorly manage the business, and no one says anything about it. And then we have people come in, elect me, I'll fix it, but then they end up doing the same thing. So now we have a third party going in and auditing the government to make sure that they are doing what they are saying they are doing. And if they're wasting money, if they're doing any kind of fraud or abusing resources, then they're going to report it. So this is just remarkable. And it's just common sense, right? It's just, you would think that everyone would be on board with this. Like, who would not want the government to rein in spending, right? This just shows the depth of the Trump derangement syndrome that is on the left when you have people that are just so up in arms about this, and they cannot fathom a private organization coming in and auditing the government, because apparently they think the government is running smoothly.
Reconcile blank checks. You've got comment fields that are also blank, so you don't know why the payment was made. And then we've got this truly absurd, a do not pay list, which can take up to a year for an organization to get on a do not pay list.
Wow.
And this, we're talking about terrorist organizations, we're talking about known fraudsters, known aspects of waste, known things that do not match any congressional appropriation, can take up to a year to get on the list. And even once on the list is not used.
Oh my gosh.
It's mind-blowing. So what we're talking about here, we're really just talking about adding common sense controls that should be present, that haven't been present. So you say, like, well, how could such a thing arise? That seems crazy. When you understand that really everything is geared towards complaint minimization, so then you understand the motivations. So if people receive money, they don't complain.
Sounds very familiar. That's basically how my last police department was run, minimizing complaints at the expense of public safety.
Obviously. But if people don't receive money, they do complain. And the fraudsters complain the loudest and the fastest. So then when you understand that, then it makes sense. Oh, that's why everything they approve all the payments at Treasury. Because if you approve all the payments, you don't get complaints. But now we're saying that, no, actually, we are going to complain. If money is spent badly, if your taxpayer dollars are not spent in a sensible and frugal manner, then that's not okay.
Yeah.
Your tax dollars need to be spent wisely on things that matter to the people. I mean, these things, it's just common sense. It's not draconian or radical, I think. It's really just saying, let's look at each of these expenditures and say, is this actually in the best interest of the people? And if it is, it's approved. If it's not, we should think about it.
Yeah, you replace Trump and Elon with people from the left, and no one's going to have an issue with that. No one on the left's going to have an issue with that. But because these two characters, so many people hate them, and over the last few years, the institution, the bureaucracy that they are uncovering went after both of them. It's amazing to see both of these characters here, because you have Trump, obviously, he was attacked over and over and over. I mean, they tried to kill him, they tried to put him in prison, and then you have Elon, they tried to run him out of business. They tried to tell him, well, you can't have, according to federal law, you can't have certain people with certain immigration statuses on your payroll. But then they would also tell him, well, you need more diversity in your workforce, and if you don't have these people in your payroll, and so you have these mutually exclusive requirements that they were giving him and taking him into court. And so it's just amazing to see those two people in the Oval Office leading the charge on this.
So, there's crazy things like just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone is 150? I don't know. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
They should be on the Guinness Book of World Records. They're missing out. So, that's a case where, I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous, one of the two. And then there's a whole bunch of Social Security payments where there's no identifying information. Well, why is there no identifying information? Obviously, we want to make sure that people who deserve to receive Social Security do receive it, and that they receive it quickly and accurately. I'll tell you another crazy thing. So, one of the things is we are trying to sort of right-size the federal bureaucracy, just make sure that this, obviously there need to be a lot of people working for the federal government, but not as many as currently. So we're saying, if people can retire, with full benefits and everything, that would be good. They can retire, get their retirement payments, everything. And then we were told, this is actually, I think, a great anecdote, because we're told the most number of people that could retire possibly in a month is 10,000. We're like, well, why is that? Well, because all the retirement paperwork is manual on paper. It's manually calculated, then written down on a piece of paper. Then it goes down a mine. And I'm like, what do you mean a mine? There's a limestone mine where we store all the retirement paperwork. And you look at a picture of this mine. We'll post some pictures afterwards. And this mine looks like something out of the 50s because it was started in 1955. So it looks like it's like a time warp. And then the speed, the limiting factor is the speed at which the mine shaft elevator can move determines how many people can retire from the federal government.
You gotta be kidding me.
And the elevator breaks down sometimes, and then nobody can retire.
That's, for anyone who's worked in government, you'll understand what I'm saying. That's like one of the most government bureaucratic things and stories I've ever heard. But there are so many examples like that where you ask yourself, why are we doing it this way? Well, it's because of this and this other thing. You're like, but that doesn't make any sense. We could do this differently, more efficiently, but we're doing it this way because that's just the way it's always been done. So, oh my gosh, an elevator is the determining factor, the limiting factor on whether or not a certain number of people in the federal government can retire. How many people can retire in a month? It's crazy.
Doesn't that sound crazy?
Yes, it does.
There's like 1,000 people that work on this. So I think if we can take those people and say, like, you know what, instead of working in a mine shaft and carrying manila envelopes to, boxes in a mine shaft, you could do practically anything else. And you would add to the goods and services of the United States in a more useful way. So anyway, so I think, that's an example. At a high level, if you say, like, how do we increase prosperity, is we get people to shift from roles that are low to negative productivity to high productivity roles. And so you increase the total output of goods and services,
like
which
in
means
any
that
business.
there's a higher standard of living available for everyone. That's the actual goal. Everyone's very quiet, by the way. So are people normally this quiet?
They're quiet because this is probably the most, or one of the most recent, in recent history, authentic, non-scripted, just real, transparent conversation press briefings that have happened in the Oval Office or in the White House in general. I mean, people are not used to this. And so it's like a whole different playbook. It doesn't even make sense. They can't even compute what is going on.
Your detractors, Mr. Musk,
I have to what?
including a lot of Democrats.
I have detractors?
You do, sir.
I don't believe it.
Say that you're orchestrating
It's so
a hostile
awkward.
takeover of government and doing it in a non-transparent way. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, first of all,
Trump's clapping up.
you couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. The public voted, we have a majority of the public voting for President Trump. We won the House, we won the Senate. The people voted for major government reform.
Yep.
There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform, and that's what the people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for, and that's what democracy is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Musk, the White House says that you will identify and excuse yourself from any conflicts of interest that you may have. Does that mean that you are in effect policing yourself? What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there is accountability and transparency?
On the floor.
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the Doge handle on X and to the Doge website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think there's been, I don't know of a case where an organization has been more transparent than the Doge organization. So, and the kind of things we're doing are, I think, very, very simple and basic. They're not, what I mentioned, for example, about Treasury, just making sure that payments that go out, taxpayer money that goes out, is categorized correctly, that the payment is explained, that organizations on the do not pay list, which takes a lot to get there, that actually are not paid, which currently they are paid. These are not individual judgment decisions. These are about simply having sensible checks and balances in the system itself to ensure that taxpayer money is spent well. So it's got nothing to do with, like, say, a contract for some company of mine at all.
But if there is a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself, for instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts. When it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president, I know, has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that? Is there any sort of accountability check and balance in place that would provide any transparency for the American people?
He just answered that question. He said they're going to be fully transparent and going to share everything that they find. And I think this goes back to what I said about these people are still, they don't understand the new playbook that he's referring to. And they're so used to what they think is transparency, which is not actual transparency, that they can't even comprehend. They can't even wrap their heads around what he means by transparency. As far as I understand, what he's saying is everything they find, it's going to be open. Everywhere they're looking, it's going to be open so that anyone who wants to contribute, almost like an open source type transparency, anyone who wants to contribute, can say, hey, what about this contract where SpaceX won and this other company did not get it? Like, people are going to be able to identify that and pass it up to whoever can make those decisions. But they're not going to be operating in a way where you cannot see what they're finding. And they seem to not understand that. And I honestly think it's just because we've never really seen actual transparency like we have seen with this.
Well, all of our actions are fully public. So if you see anything, you say, like, wait a second, hey, Elon, that seems like maybe that's, that there's a conflict there. It's not like people are going to be shy about saying that. They'll say it immediately,
Including you yourself.
Yes. But
Oh my gosh.
transparency is what builds trust, not simply somebody asserting trust. So not somebody saying they're trustworthy, but transparency, so you can see everything that's going on.
You can trust us.
And then you
We're
can see,
with the
am I
government.
doing something that benefits one of my companies or not? It's totally obvious.
And if we thought that, we would not let him do that segment or look in that area if we thought there was a lack of transparency or a conflict of interest. And we watch that also. He's a big businessman. He's a successful guy. That's why we want him doing this. We don't want an unsuccessful guy doing this. Now, one thing also that Elon hasn't really mentioned are the groups of people that are getting some of these payments. They're ridiculous. And we're talking about billions of dollars that we've already found. We found fraud and abuse. I would say those two words as opposed to the third word that I usually use, but in this case, fraud and abuse. It's abusive because most of these things are virtually made up, or certainly money shouldn't be sent to them. And you know what I'm talking about. It's crazy. So, but we're talking about tens of billions of dollars that we've already found. And now a judge who's an activist judge wants to try and stop us from doing this. Why? Why would they want to do that? I campaigned on this. I campaigned on the fact that I said government is corrupt. And it is very corrupt. It's very, very, it's also foolish. As an example, a man has a contract for 3 months and the contract ends, but they keep paying him for the next 20 years, because nobody ends a contract. You get a lot of that.
Wow.
You have a contract that's a 3-month contract. Now, normally, if you're in a small, in all fairness, it's the size of this thing is so big.
Yeah.
But if you have a contract and you're in a regular business, you end the contract in 3 months. It's a consultant. Here's a contract for 3 months, but it goes on for 20 years. And the guy doesn't say that he got money for 20 years, They don't say it. They just keep getting checks month after month. And you have various things like that, and even much worse than that, actually, much worse. And I guess you call that incompetence, maybe.
Yeah.
It could be corruption. It could be deals made on both sides, where the guy gets the money, he kicks. I think there's a lot of kickback here. I see a lot of kickback here.
There's a lot of kickbacks.
Tremendous kickback, because nobody could be so stupid to give out some of these contracts,
Yes.
so he has to get a kickback. So that's what I got elected for, that and borders and military and a lot of things, but this is a big part of it. And I hope that the court system is going to allow us to do what we have to do. We got elected to among other things, find all of this fraud, abuse, all of this horrible stuff going on. And we've already found billions of dollars, not like a little bit, billions, many billions of
That's
dollars.
so much money.
And when you get down to it, it's going to be probably close to $1 trillion. It could be close to $1 trillion that we're going to find. That will have quite an impact on the budget. And you'll go to a judge where they handpick a judge, and he has certain leanings. I'm not knocking anybody for that, but he has certain leanings, and he wants us to stop looking. How do you stop looking? I mean, we've already found it.
That's a red
We have a
flag.
case in New York where a hotel has paid $59 million, $59 million because it's housing migrants, illegal migrants, all illegal, I believe.
And they were being paid twice the normal room rate at 100% occupancy.
Unbelievable.
So it's a racket.
Yeah.
Mr. Musk, can I ask you a question? You
Well,
said
if I may sort of just going for the president's comments, at a high level, you say, well, what are the two ingredients that are really necessary in order to cut the budget deficit in half from 2 trillion to 1 trillion? And it's really two things: competence and caring. And if you add competence and caring, you'll cut the budget deficit in half. And I fully expect to be scrutinized and get a daily proctology exam.
What's funny is neither one of those two describe what you would think of when you think of a government employee, either competent or caring.
Might as well just camp out there. So it's not like I think I can get away.
What do you say?
And I fully expect to be scrutinized and get a daily proctology exam, basically. Might as well just camp out there. So it's not like I think I can get away with something. I'll be scrutinized nonstop. But with the support of the president, we can cut the budget deficit in half from 2 trillion to 1, and then with deregulation, because there's a lot of sort of regulations that don't ultimately serve the public good. We need to free the builders of America to build. And if we do that, that means I think we can get the economic growth to be maybe 3-4%, maybe 5%.
Wow.
And that means if you can get $1 trillion of economic growth and you cut the budget deficit by $1 trillion, between now and next year, there is no inflation. There's no inflation in 26.
Yeah, that would be
And if the government is not
amazing.
borrowing as much, it means that interest costs decline. So everyone's, the mortgage, their car payment, their credit card bills, anything, their student debt, the monthly payments drop. That's a fantastic scenario for the average American.
to say the least.
I mean, imagine they're going down the grocery aisle and the prices from one year to the next are the same, and their mortgage, all their debt payments dropped. How great is that for the average American?
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That would be
We
amazing.
had no
what we're aiming
idea. We had no idea we were going to find this much, and it's open. It's not like complicated. It's
not that
simple stuff.
complicated.
It's
a
like
lot of work,
We
yeah.
can't believe it. A lot of work. A lot of smart people involved. Very, very smart people. But you're talking about anywhere maybe 500 billion. It's crazy the kind of numbers you're
It is really
talking
crazy.
about. You know, normally when you're looking at something, you'll find you're looking for 1 out of 100. Here, you're almost reversing it. You look for one that's good,
Yeah.
and you can look at the title, and you say, "Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that?"
I
And the
shouldn't be
public gets
laughing,
it.
'cause
You
this
know,
is
the
so
public
bad.
gets it. You've seen the polls.
It's great
the
that we're doing
public is
this,
saying,
but-
"Why are we paying all this money? This for years."
bad that it's been
this
happening.
has gone on.
Mr. Musk,
President
you
Trump,
said
Senator-
Yeah, go ahead. Wait, go ahead.
Senator Rand Paul today said that DOGE cuts will ultimately need a vote in Congress. Do you agree with that? Is that the
I
plan?
really don't know. I know this. We're finding tremendous fraud and tremendous abuse. If I need a vote of Congress to find fraud and abuse, it's fine with me. I think we'll get the vote, although there'll be some people that wouldn't vote. And how could a judge want to hold us back from finding all of this fraud?
'Cause they're corrupt.
And finding all of this incompetence. Why would that happen? Why would even Congress want to do that? Now, Congress, if we do need a vote, I think we'd get a very easy vote because we have a track record now. We've already found billions of dollars of abuse, incompetence, and corruption. A lot of corruption.
If a judge does block one of your policies, part of your agenda, will you abide by that ruling? Will you
Well,
comply
I
with that
always
order?
abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it. But then what he's done is he slowed down the momentum.
What that reminds me of is going back to the election where you had these jurisdictions that, I think in like California, where they made laws where you could not identify voters. So it wasn't just about voter ID, like you could not even ask for the person's ID. And if they showed it to you, if you were working at the booth and or the voting polling place and they showed you their ID, you weren't even allowed to look at it. It reminds me of that. It's like, why? It's almost just so audacious, such an audacious form of corruption that's not even hiding anymore. That's what this reminds me of. It's like, what judge would say, no, I don't want you to go look into corruption? You're not even allowed to look. So that is, we need to get those people off the bench.
Gives crooked people more time to cover up the books. You know, if a person's crooked and they get caught, other people see that, and all of a sudden it becomes harder later on. So, yeah, the answer is I always abide by the courts, always abide by them, and will appeal. But appeals take a long time, and I would hope that a judge, if you go into a judge and you show him, here's a corrupt situation, we have a check to be sent, but we found it to be corrupt. Do you want us to send this corrupt check to a person, or do you want us not to give it and give it back to the taxpayer? I would hope a judge would say, don't send it, give it back to the taxpayer.
Yeah, it's kind of a litmus
If I can
test.
add to that, what we're finding is that a bunch of the fraud is not even
Sons
going to
on his head,
Americans.
or his
So I
shoulders.
think we can all agree that if there's going to be fraud, it should at least go to Americans. But a bunch of the fraud rings that are operating in the United States and taking advantage of the federal government, especially in the entitlements programs, are actually foreign fraud rings. They're operating in other countries and actually exporting money to other countries.
Gosh.
We should stop that.
Mr. Musk, you
And
said,
this is big numbers. Talk about $100 to $200 billion a year. Serious money.
Mr. Musk, you said on X that an example of the fraud that you have cited was $50 million of condoms was sent to Gaza. But after fact check this, it apparently Gaza
What?
in Mozambique, and the program was to protect them against HIV. So can you correct the statements? It wasn't sent to Hamas actually. It was sent to Mozambique, which makes sense why condoms was sent there.
Yeah.
And how can we make sure that all the statements that you said were correct, so we can trust what you say?
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes. So
Elon, his ability to prioritize the truth over his own ego is so remarkable. And that's what these people, these reporters, they don't understand. He is so willing to prioritize the truth over his own ego that he's willing to say things like that. He's like, yeah, I made a mistake. I'm going to make mistakes. When's the last time you heard someone in government talk like that? When is the last time you heard someone in government talk like that? It's almost never.
I'm not sure we should be sending $50 million worth of condoms to anywhere, frankly.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's something Americans would be really excited about. And that is really an enormous number of condoms, if you think about it. If it went to Mozambique instead of Gaza, I'm like, okay, Americans would be really excited about. And that is really an enormous number of condoms, if you think about it. If it went to Mozambique instead of Gaza, I'm like, okay, that's not as bad, but still, why are we doing that?
Yeah.
Mr. Musk, can you talk a little bit about how closely you're working with agency heads as you're directing these cuts? Do they have how much input do agency heads have when you're making these decisions?
Yeah, we work closely with the agency heads, there are sort of checks in place. So it's not just us just going in and doing things willy-nilly. It's in partnership with the agency heads, and I check frequently with the president to make sure that this is what the president wants to have happen. So we talk almost every day, and I double check things to make sure, is this something, Mr. President, you want us to do this? Then we'll do it.
USAID has been one of your main targets. Are you concerned at all that some of the cuts or that shutting that agency altogether may lead to diseases or other bigger problems starting in other countries that then come to the United States?
Yeah, so that's an interesting example. So that's something where we work closely with the State Department and Secretary Rubio. And we have, for example, turned on funding for Ebola prevention and for HIV prevention.
Left that, you said?
Yes, correct. And we are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we'll also fix the mistakes very quickly.
Do you see it as a worthy cause, USAID?
I think that there's some worthy things, but overall, if you say what was the bang for the buck, I would say it was not very good. And there was far too much of what USAID was doing was influencing elections in ways that I think were dubious and do not stand the light of day.
I can just ask a follow-up to the Pentagon contracts. If you have received billions of dollars in contracts from the Pentagon, and the president's directing you to look into the Department of Defense. Is
Yes,
that
which we
a
definitely need
conflict
to
of
do and
interest?
are going to do at the president's request.
Does that present a conflict of interest for you?
No, because you'd have to look at the individual contract and say, first of all, I'm not the one, filing the contract. It's people at SpaceX or someone who will be putting for the contract. And I'd like to say, if you see any contract where where it was awarded to SpaceX and it wasn't by far the best value for money for the taxpayer, let me know, because every one of them was.
The president said the other day that you might look at treasuries. Could you explain that a little bit? What kind of fraud, and that question goes to both of you, what kind of fraud are you expecting to see or do you see right now in U.S. treasuries?
Yeah, I think you mean the Treasury Department as opposed to Treasury bills, or.
You also referenced treasuries on Air Force One the other night.
Go ahead.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, really, the first order of business is to make sure we're actually collecting. Sorry for this. I thought my son might enjoy this, but he's sticking his fingers in my ears and stuff. So it's been hard to hear sometimes. Hey, stop that. No, the stuff we're doing with the Treasury Department is so basic that you can't believe it doesn't exist already. So for example, like I mentioned, just making sure that when a payment goes out, it has to have a payment categorization code. It's like, what type of payment is this? You can't just leave the field blank. Currently, many payments, the field is left blank. And you have to describe what's the payment
so
for, some
mind-blowing.
basic rationalization. That also is left blank. So this is why, the Pentagon, when's the last time the Pentagon passed an audit? I mean, a decade ago, maybe? Ever? Really? And we want to just, in order to actually pass audits, you have to have financial information that allows you to trace the payments. And once in a while, the Treasury has to.
So it's like in any business. In my business, I have to keep track of my receipts. So if I'm meeting someone for lunch and it's a business meeting, or I purchase ammo, or whatever the case may be, I have to keep track of my receipts and track of all those expenses. But yet, the federal government, apparently, they're just writing out checks and not keeping track of those expenses, not keeping track of those receipts. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
Pause payments if it thinks the payment is going to a fraudulent organization. Like, if a company or an organization is on a do not pay list, we should not pay it. I'm sure you would agree. Like, if it's quite hard to get on that payment, the do not pay list, it means that this is someone that is like dead people, terrorists, known fraudsters, that kind of thing. We should not pay them. But currently we do,
makes sense.
which is crazy. We should stop that.
Many transactions. And by the way, hundreds, thousands of transactions like that. We have a big team. And for the sake of the country, I hope that the person that's in charge and the other people that report to me that are in charge are allowed to do the right thing, namely make sure everything's honest, legitimate, and competent. But we're looking at just, when you look at USAID, that's one. We're going to look at the military. We're going to look at education.
ATF.
They're much bigger areas. But the USAID is really corrupt. I'll tell you, it's corrupt. It's incompetent, and it's really corrupt. And I can't imagine a judge saying, well, it may be corrupt, but you don't have the right. You got elected to look over the country and to, as we say, make America great again, but you don't have the right to go and look and see whether or not things are right that they're paying, or that things are honest that they're paying. And nobody can even believe this. Other people, law professors, they've been saying, how can you take that person's right away? You're supposed to be running the country, but we're not allowed to look at who they're paying it to and what they're paying. We have massive amounts of fraud that we caught. I think we probably caught way over a lot of billions of dollars already in, 2 weeks?
Yes.
And it's going to go to numbers that you're not going to believe. And much, as I said, much is incompetence and much is dishonesty. We have to catch it. And the only way we're going to catch it is to look for it. And if a judge is going to say you're not allowed to look for it, that's pretty sad for our country. I don't understand how it could even work.
Yeah, judges should be more focused on protecting individuals' rights and less concerned with protecting the rights of these bureaucratic institutions that are stealing taxpayer money.
personally guarantee that
Which one?
the buyout program, the offer to federal workers, can you personally guarantee that the workers who opt in to resign now will be paid through
Well, they'll
September?
get their money, but they're getting a good deal. They're getting a big buyout. And what we're trying to do is reduce government. We have too many people. We have office space. It's occupied by 4%. Nobody's showing up to work because they were told not to. And then Biden gave them a 5-year pass, some of them, 48,000 of them, gave them a 5-year pass, that for 5 years you don't have to show up to work. And let me tell you, this is largely, much of this stuff is because of Biden. It's his fault. He allowed this country, what he did on our border. What he did on our border is almost not as bad as what he did with all of these contracts that have come out. It's a very sad day when we look at it. I can't even believe it. But many contracts just extend, and they just keep extending, and there was nobody there to correct it. And that cannot be, I can't imagine that could be held up by the court. Any court that would say that the president or his representatives, like Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of State, whatever, doesn't have the right to go over their books and make sure everything's honest. I mean, how can you have a country? You can't have anything that way. You can't have a business that way. You can't have a country that way. Hey, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Head down.
Is that it?
Coming back tonight. Mark Fogel will be at the White House tonight at about 10 o'clock. If you want to come over, you can say hello to him.
Did the U.S. give anything in return?
Not much. No, they were very nice. We were treated very nicely by Russia, actually. I hope that's the beginning of a relationship where we can end that war and millions of people can stop being killed. They've lost millions of people. They lost, in terms of soldiers, probably 1.5 million soldiers in a short period of time. We got to stop that war. And I'm interested primarily from the standpoint of death. We're losing all those soldiers. And they're not American soldiers, they're Ukrainian and Russian soldiers. But you're probably talking about 1.5 million. I think we got to bring that one to an end. Okay? Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. So, man, that was amazing. I'm hoping that everything they say or we're talking about comes to fruition, and it's not just one of these things where it happens and then it just kind of gets brushed under the rug, and a few years from now we're like, hey, what happened to that whole Doge thing? And then looking into government corruption. But it seems like it's actually going to happen. I mean, Elon does not play around, and he has put some of the smartest people on this. Like that one guy I talked about who won the $40,000 prize for finding the ancient writings on like 2,000-year-old scrolls using AI technology. So you got those type of people looking for government corruption, which I would imagine finding government corruption is much easier than that. So yeah, and like you talked about, looking into other agencies as well. I'm really hoping they're going to look into ATF. A lot of this has to do with taxpayer money right now, but I think as this expands, it's going to expand into looking into agencies that are overstepping their boundaries, and organizations like the ATF making laws, right? They're not technically rewriting the books, but they're changing definitions. And when you change the definitions of something and laws are based on words, which are based on definitions, then you have changed the law. So yeah, I'm excited to see over the next 30 days with his executive order, and then just over the next few years, like what this turns into. But guys, if you haven't already, please like this video, comment below if you have anything you want to add, and please also subscribe. And then if you have subscribed, make sure you hit that bell, because as you can see by this graph, hardly any of our subscribers get notified about our videos. As you know, YouTube does not like channels like this. I actually just got a strike this morning for a video where YouTube said that I was showing violence, which I wasn't, because you couldn't see anything. It was blurred out. But nonetheless, please like, comment, and subscribe. Turn that bell on, and then also do me a favor and share this video with at least 2 people, okay? The more people that see these videos, the more YouTube will say, okay, people like this channel, and it will start promoting my videos more and more. So thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, train to a higher standard.